So my name is Sebastien. I come from Belgium and I've been at TSF for 3 years now. So I'm officially, my official job title is ICT specialist, which is quite broad because actually it has two main parts in the job. One of them is IT support at the HQ, so in charge of all the infrastructure and the tools and the laptops and well, make sure that the network works and all the tools work, and it's pretty much what you would imagine of the IT guy who would fix the printer every other week. And then the other part of the job is in charge of all the technical tools when we are on the field and during the missions. So it can be the satellite connectivity, it can be the Wi-Fi, the laptops, all the technical tools that we use, and the ones we deploy during the missions and the one we need to maintain after the missions as well. So all the technical aspects, it's on me. Well, TSF is a bit particular as an NGO because we are an NGO focused on technology. Many organizations use technology as a means to reach their own goals, but technology for us is really at the heart of our activities. And technology is a wide topic. We use plenty of them. So, historically, our specialty is more the connectivity. So we use all the technologies that we need to establish first voice or telephony links, and then most of the time these days internet connectivity. So it can be satellite, it can be Wi-Fi, it can be 4G, it can be fiber optics, well, what it takes to establish the communications. But also when that, I would say, communication channel is established, we need to use all the technologies on the field to make sure that we are able to use them. So Wi-Fi, for instance, is a big one, because when you have this connectivity to distribute in a refugee camp, the Wi-Fi setup is a bit particular. You need to use special equipment, special access points, you need to configure them properly. So this is where we really have a good experience and where we really shine, I would say. But also we try to use the technology which is the most appropriate for the purpose. So it's not always just connectivity. For the project we have in Mexico, for instance, we want to share information with the migrants in Mexico, in Central America. And then it's not connectivity, it comes with connected TVs. So we have to find a way to connect these TVs to the internet to push information we want to display. But the connectivity is not the goal of the project. The goal of the project is to share information. So there it's more about connected TVs, for instance. Another example that I could give, and actually it's representative of the, I would say, the evolution of the technologies, is that we use more and more 4G, because LTE 4G is available in more and more places. And when we had this project in Romania, for instance, we wanted to provide internet connectivity inside buses for refugees from Ukraine. So it meant connectivity on the move. People would go into the buses and they would want to have Wi-Fi in the buses, so we had to provide mobility connectivity. And we use 4G for that. We use some routers that we installed in the buses to distribute the connectivity while the bus was moving. And the challenge was that these buses were going from Moldova to Romania, so we had to install equipment that would be able to work on both networks. That's something we never did before, but we just found the right equipment, we configured it, we deployed it, and it's been a success. So that's another example of adaptability of our solutions also.
Is there something that stayed with you, a story, a mission, during your work at TSF?
We deployed in February 2022 for Cyclone Batirai, and we were there on the ground and we were performing our relief operations. And while we were there, another cyclone arrived at the very same location where we were, Cyclone Emnati. So at the middle of the operations, we had to stop everything and take shelter and protect ourselves for 24 hours, because we just couldn't, we could have escaped, but this would have meant that it would have been more difficult to come back after the hurricane comes. It's not a hurricane, it's a cyclone. Well, it's the same phenomenon, but different name in different regions. And so we decided to stay there, like most of the humanitarians actually. We decided to stay there to be able to immediately respond to the second cyclone, because everything was already been devastated by Batirai. And we were afraid that Amnati would be the same. On the maps it looked like the same size, same trajectory, so we were a bit concerned. And also it was quite new for us and for most of humanitarians, because not many people are used to be under the cyclone when it arrives. Most of the people, they are used to come afterwards, but being under it was quite new for us. It's been a bit scary, but it's been interesting as well, because we had to completely change the shift of the mission. For 24 hours. We had to provide emergency communications during a disaster and not after a disaster. First, it changes all the operations, because all the humanitarians have to hide somewhere, and all the displaced people, they need to move back to shelters or to find another place where they can stay, because some shelters had been destroyed with the first cyclone, so people had to be relocated somewhere else. And we had to establish the coordination center in case something would go wrong with the second cyclone during the night it struck. So I personally spent the night in the coordination center, because our hotel was not safe enough to stay there. And we had to establish emergency phone lines for that night that fortunately we didn't need. But yeah, spending a night under a cyclone remains a story that sticks with me.
Definitely a challenge to respond to something while the hurricane or the cyclone is actively above you. What is the biggest challenge or challenges that you face in TSF?
Well, we have quite a few challenges, that's for sure, but I would say that the biggest ones for us at the moment are not technical. There are more and more non-technical reasons that prevent us from providing our solutions. And it's very frustrating for us to see the situations happening, to know that we could technically provide a solution for it. We have the equipment, we could go there and help, and we cannot go for non-technical reasons. So that's a challenge for us with the current situations. Another challenge is that the missions are taking much longer time than before. In the past, typically we would go there for 3 weeks, 1 month maybe, just in the aftermath of the disaster. We provide the first communications and we support the relief effort, and after 3 weeks, well, anyway we are too tired anyway to continue. We just go home and we wait for the next one to happen. That's not the case anymore, because the disasters are more intense, but mostly because the disasters tend to happen in areas that are already in crisis before the disaster. So hence the name protracted crisis. It's because it's disaster stacking up on another crisis, which itself is stacked up on something else. For instance, when you take Haiti, I went there in 2021 after the earthquake, and it looks like this country is having a disaster every 5 years, because you had the earthquake 5 years before, you had Hurricane Matthew, and then before it was the other earthquake on Port-au-Prince. And when you go to such a mission, even after 3 weeks, you kind of supported the immediate relief efforts for the latest disaster, but you are still back to the situation just before disaster, which is already in crisis. It's difficult for us that most of the missions where we go now, they continue in time and they stack up on each other, and ultimately, even when we are here at the HQ, we still have to manage like 5 or 6 ongoing missions without being there. So we have to do a lot of monitoring and remote sensing and try to figure out exactly how it works, because most of the time when we pull out, we leave some equipment behind. And that's also part of the technology that we need to use, is how to monitor and to manage a technical solution that would be deployed abroad without us being there.
What is something that you love about your job or that you find interesting?
I really like the structure of TSF as itself. It's a small NGO with a great team, a small team, which has to be efficient because we don't have the resources to be everywhere and do everything. And so it's very dynamic. The decision taking is very fast. It's only half a dozen people involved, so we can deploy very fast, and that's being actually recognized in the humanitarian community. We have a whole scope of technology, And we have to understand many different technologies and make them work together with equipment that may have not been designed for it. For instance, when we deploy what I mentioned before, the Wi-Fi for refugee camps, when you want to provide Wi-Fi for several hundreds of people in a camp, you cannot do that with an off-the-shelf access point that you would buy at the local store. Well, you can try, but it will not work well. So we have to bring high-performance equipment, typically something that would be used in airports or hospitals or shopping centers or big venues, but they may not have been designed to work under the rain in a refugee camp. They've never been, actually. And so we do face challenges with this equipment because we use them in a setup that they were not meant to be used for. So we need to be aware of the limitations of the equipment. And we also can discuss with the provider of these equipments. We had a case in Bosnia, for instance, where we deployed them in a big warehouse which was full of metal structures and metal beams. And the interferences in this setup was skyrocketing. I mean, it was really the worst location to put a Wi-Fi, but well, we needed to provide connectivity there. And we had so many issues with the equipment that we reached out to the manufacturer, to the provider, and we gave them a very detailed and accurate description of the issues. And they came back to us and they said, well, first, we've never seen that before because this has never been tested in such a setup. And second, we really love what you are doing with our equipment, so we want to help you.
How do you see the role of technology in humanitarian action in the coming years?
Well, I see it evolving for sure, because that's, well, it's in the definition of technology, it's always evolving. And I see, in the specific context of humanitarian, I see two big trends going. The first one is that technology will be more and more pervasive and present everywhere and accelerating. And also in the specific context of humanitarian, people, and especially foreigners or people like us who would go on a region after a disaster, people are more and more used to work like home. And so they expect that they will just turn up the laptop and will have a Wi-Fi and it will work just the same as when they're at the office. And for a long time, it was not possible because the technology and the communication, especially on the ground, would not allow it. Now it does. With the latest technology, you really can have broadband everywhere. And you can just turn on your laptop everywhere and work like if you were home with a Zoom calls and a Google Drive and well, pretty much everything that you would expect. So that's quite new. It will probably follow the same trend, and actually it will be some challenges because the technology will call for technology. At first, when you only had a very slow and very limited connectivity on the ground and you had to send your report from the middle of nowhere, you were limited by the equipment you had and you had to go straight to the point with limited reports, very concentrated with just a minimal information. Now that you have broadband pretty much everywhere in the world, you can afford to have coordination calls that last 4 hours, or you can send every video or a picture, high definition pictures, and well, you can bring a lot more information on the table, which is great. But it comes with its limitations because you need more technology to manage more information. So it's kind of a circle, technology calling for itself. And it's no more a technological issue, it's more like information management issue. So, well, technology will be more and more present in an emergency, and we have to accept that. But, I mean, if people get used to have broadband pretty much everywhere on the planet, the whole ecosystem will adapt to it, and all the tools will just assume the fact that they can have this broadband connection, and all the developers of the newer solutions, they will never think about the slower connection that like we might have had before. We had a training in South America 2 years ago where we had to train new local teams in real situations. So we brought our legacy equipment and we set up a VSAT link, which was a VSAT link from time, which is slow with latency and everything. And the people were complaining that their tools or simulation platform or something did not work on that connection. It's just that it had never been designed to work with a slow connection. It just assumed that you would have fiber optics, and the whole platform was too heavy and too slow to work on a slower link. And so people was frustrated and they were blaming the connectivity, while actually the problem was the tool, not the connectivity itself. Because one day there will be in a real disaster, it will be a limited connectivity because that's how it works. And so people will start to realize that their tools cannot work the way they assume it would work, I would say, magical way. So that's also an advantage for us. It's because since we've been there since the beginning, we've seen the whole evolutions of the technologies, and we still know how to use the legacy ones. And I personally think that there is still some use cases for slower, or I would say older technology. First, because it's battle tested. It's been there for decades, and many emergencies happened with only these technologies. And the veterans of humanitarian action, they know how to use it, and they still know how to operate with these conditions. And we still know how to set them up and maintain them. Older or legacy equipment, it's also the advantage that you can, or you have more chance to find them locally, because they are older, they are legacy, they might be refurbished or second-hand, but at least you can find them locally easier than the latest one that you may have to bring with you and pull out with you as well. Because if you need to leave them behind for people to maintain them, it's easier also to set up, to explain, to teach the people how to use them, to maintain it. If they need to fix it after you leave, they still can find the spares locally. So there's still some place for the older or legacy equipment. And it's also why it's part of the training we provide to the local teams. Our action will not only be technology for the sake of it. It will need to be part of something more global, and where we need to find the right balance and the best way to provide technology, the best solution which is needed for each project. It's also part of our expertise to know all the possible solutions, to choose the best one, to make sure that it fits exactly the purpose of the project.